Welcome to this explainer. Listen, if you've been glancing at the news lately, you already know the economic landscape of 2026 is frankly incredibly confusing. I mean, one day we're told the economy is booming, and literally the next we're being warned that the sky is falling and a crash is imminent. Well, our goal today is to cut through the noise and demystify these conflicting headlines. We're going to look directly at the hard data and the expert analysis to figure out what is actually going on beneath the surface of the global economy. And most importantly, we'll break down exactly what all this means for your wallet.
So let's start right at the top with the massive question on everyone's mind. Is a 2026 recession inevitable? Honestly, it's a totally fair question to ask right now. We've seen some serious turbulence in the job market, staggering levels of consumer debt, and skyrocketing prices at both the grocery store and the gas pump. To really answer this, we need to look at what the top financial models are predicting. And as you're about to see, the so-called experts, they are deeply divided.
On the more optimistic side of things, we have a 25 to 30% chance of a recession. Prediction markets like Polymarket, along with major institutions like Goldman Sachs, are currently hovering right in this range. They're pointing to things like resilient first-quarter GDP growth, a stable unemployment rate holding at around 4.3%, and a Federal Reserve that is trying its best to engineer a soft landing. So to them, the economy is simply cooling off a bit. It's not crashing.
But hold on a second, because we need to contrast that immediately with this figure, 49%. This comes straight from Moody's leading economic indicator. And what's really wild here is that this specific model uses extensive economic data combined with machine learning to hunt down hidden patterns. That is a massive jump, and it represents the highest probability of a recession we've seen since the 2020 pandemic. Moody's points out that this surge is driven mostly by a deteriorating job market and softening economic data across the board. Historically speaking, a probability this high has never been reported outside of actual realized recessions.
And then we get absolute visual whiplash, 93%. This shocking prediction comes from UBS. They base this near certainty on what they call historically worrying hard data models, meaning they are looking strictly at cold hard metrics like personal income, consumption, and industrial production. They argue that right beneath the surface, the structural pillars of the economy, yeah, they're already buckling.
Okay, here is our agenda for today. 1. The 2026 recession question. 2. Macro threats and stagflation. 3. The consumer debt trap. 4. Commodities and market surprises. And 5. Recession-proofing your finances.
All right, let's jump into section 2. Macro threats and stagflation, the big picture.
I absolutely love this quote from financial advisor Chris Moravsky. He says, "You need to be your own do-it-yourself economist. You're going to do a better job than most of the eggheads." And what he means by that is, while national data models are useful, they can very often mask what is actually happening on the ground in everyday life. You have to look around your own community, look at the local storefronts, gauge the realities of your own neighborhood's economy, rather than blindly trusting institutional models that honestly miss the mark all the time. No offense to the eggheads, but local data usually beats a national spreadsheet.
Because when we do look at the hard chronological data, a very specific and kind of scary threat emerges. Let's track this out. At the end of 2025, GDP growth was an anemic 0.5%. By February and March 2026, the Consumer Price Index, so inflation, jumped 3.3%, driven heavily by energy prices. At the exact same time, unemployment ticked up to 4.3%. Meanwhile, the Federal Reserve is stuck holding interest rates steady at 3.50 to 3.75%. This combo, slow growth, rising unemployment, and stubborn inflation, that is your classic, highly dangerous recipe for stagflation.
And just check out the massive gap between our $31 trillion headline GDP and gross output. Economists like Mark Skuzin argue that gross output, which measures the entire business-to-business supply chain, reveals the true story. Gross output is actually declining in real terms right now. That means businesses are stalling out and everyday consumers are carrying the entire weight of the economy on their shoulders.
Compounding all this macro-level stress is the staggering U.S. national debt, which is crossing $39 trillion. But here's the real kicker. The interest payments alone on this debt are projected to cross $1 trillion annually. To put that into perspective, that severely restricts government flexibility, it fuels further inflation, and it poses a massive long-term risk to our economic stability.
Which brings us to section 3, the consumer debt trap, the K-shaped economy.
So if businesses are slowing down, how on earth are consumers still spending? Well, the answer lies in what economists call the K-shaped economy. Imagine the letter K. The economy is quite literally splitting in two entirely different directions. On the upward arm of the K, we have the top 20% of earners. Because they own assets, think stocks and real estate, they benefit from the wealth effect. Their assets have exploded in value, giving them a ton of money to spend, and they currently account for roughly 60% of all US consumption. But on the downward arm, we have the everyday consumer. For them, inflation has totally eaten away at real income, completely outpacing any wage growth. Today, an estimated 47% of people are just surviving paycheck to paycheck.
And the everyday consumer is relying heavily on high-interest debt just to stay afloat. Just listen to these alarming microeconomic realities for a second. Credit card debt in the US has skyrocketed past $1 trillion. Car repossessions are currently at their highest rate since the Great Recession. Banks are outright rejecting mortgage refinancing applications at record highs because applicants are just drowning in debt. Plus, a staggering 28% of Americans are currently out there searching for new jobs. So the consumer hasn't totally tapped out yet, but man, they are incredibly vulnerable.
Section 4. Commodities and market surprises, the wildcards.
Now, historically speaking, the biggest trigger for a recession is an energy crisis. Right now, geopolitical tensions in the Middle East carry a very severe risk of disrupting global oil supplies, particularly if the Strait of Hormuz is impacted. Major financial institutions are warning that if crude oil gets pushed up into that $130 to $150 per barrel range, it would dramatically increase the odds of a global economic downturn. Keep in mind, almost every single US recession since World War II, with the exception of the 2020 pandemic, was preceded by a major spike in oil prices.
But you know, it's not just oil. The entire commodity market is behaving wildly right now. $100. That is currently what it costs to buy a single 1-ounce American Eagle silver dollar. This is largely and incredibly due to massive industrial demand from the boom in AI data centers and chip manufacturing, which is now colliding with regular people hoarding physical silver as an inflation hedge. When basic, raw commodities explode in price like this, it's a glaring warning sign of underlying financial stress in the system.
Moving on to Section 5, Recession-Proofing Your Finances, the Survival Guide.
Okay, before we get into the tactical steps here, I really want to share this quote from financial planner Jessica Morehouse. She says, "If you're worried about money, it's because you're human." And I think that's so important to hear. Looking at all this dense, sometimes scary economic data we just went through can cause a lot of anxiety. And that anxiety, it's totally normal. But instead of panicking about things we can't control, we can actually use it as motivation to build a fortress around our own personal finances. Morehouse suggests this really empowering three-step approach, based loosely on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. First, you absolutely have to secure your base by creating a spending plan and building an emergency fund. You can't worry about the top of the pyramid if the foundation is crumbling, right? Second, you must actively future-proof your career. And third, once you are financially secure, you invest in assets for the long term so that eventually your money does the working for you. Let's break these down.
Securing your base means getting hyper-focused on your cash flow. Say you're working with a baseline $70,000 salary. That's roughly $5,800 a month in gross income. The strategic goal here isn't just about cutting back on coffees. It's about aggressively carving out 15% of your net income to build up a 3 to 6 month emergency fund. And strategically speaking, that money absolutely needs to sit in a high-yield savings account at a completely separate bank. You want to totally remove the psychological temptation to touch it.
Now, once your emergency fund is rolling, you got to attack that high-interest consumer debt. There are two really popular ways to do this. The debt avalanche focuses purely on the math. You pay off the highest interest rate first to save the most money over time. But the debt snowball, that focuses on psychology. You pay off the smallest balance first, regardless of the interest rate. By getting those quick early wins and feeling that momentum, the debt snowball actually has a significantly higher human success rate. Wiping out consumer debt is absolutely vital if you want to survive an economic downturn. Step 2 is future-proofing your career, which is huge right now, especially in the age of artificial intelligence. As the source material points out, instead of being the person doing the work AI can do, become the person who knows how to tell AI what to do. Keep learning, upgrade your skills, and really lean into the things that make you irreplaceable: your personality, your adaptability, and that human touch. Always have a plan B and a plan C for your income streams. Which leaves us with this final thought today. Nobody, not even the eggheads with all their complex prediction models, can perfectly time a recession. But honestly, trying to time the market isn't the point anyway. The real question you should take away from this deep dive is this: are your personal finances anchored enough to weather the storm when it eventually arrives? Take control of your spending today, pay down that debt, and secure your career. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Start taking action right now and stay focused out there.